Happy Sunday, everyone. I don't know if you can see behind me. Yeah, I guess you can. That's a hay mower. Somebody broke down on the field. Just sold it to them, and they need some warranty work. And 'tis the season, so if I don't get it back to the shop, they won't get worked on. They won't get back to doing what they're doing. So I figured since I'm already at work, I might as well do some work here. Recently, I did a video about holding grudges and the need to let go, and how it's an absolute requirement if we want to have the deepest possible fellowship with the Lord, amongst a few other factoids inserted therein. One side of that particular subject that I didn't get around to addressing because it would have been a very long video is the fact that human beings are told regularly, it's been part of many cultures for quite a long time, it's part of Eastern mysticism and all other sorts of false religion, that there is a certain level of self-forgiveness that is necessary for people to move on or to take the next step in life or to heal from certain decisions in their past, certain circumstances, relationships, what have you. And if we look throughout the scriptures, and we're being completely honest, this is never brought up. There is never a time where we are told we must forgive ourselves for anything. And in fact, if we look at the Lord's Prayer, the very first thing is, forgive us our trespasses. Because any and every wrongdoing that ever goes on in this lifetime is not exclusively a sin against us, but it is ultimately and completely, utterly, actually, a sin against God. So it is imperative, it's imperative on multiple levels, honestly, to ask for forgiveness from Him and accept it. As believers, it is actually part of our worship to accept His forgiveness. And in fact, the Lord washing the apostles' feet the night before He was crucified, telling Peter very specifically, your whole body is white, you're in a state of saved, but as the implication, as you walk along, you'll gather up more sin, and eventually that dirt will potentially, not a guarantee, but potentially overtake you. Not only that, but as long as you're walking around holding on to sin, whether intentional or otherwise, you are hindering your ability to commune with the Lord in fellowship. Close relationship with the Lord is a separate facet of belief. Salvation comes from accepting that Jesus Christ is God and man, and His death utterly saves you from the penalty of sin. But you see therein, it's a two-sided coin, whereas one side is He is God and man, and we understand this and accept this. And I've known many, many people who are not saved that accept this. But then they don't accept the other side, that only His death is able to actually satisfy God's righteous judgment for the penalty of our sin. And if we don't actually accept that we need that, whether we're worthy or not, and technically, I think part of accepting that means we understand that we're not worthy. And in fact, the only reason why we're worthy is because God has deemed it so according to the works of His Son. And that's a hard thing. It basically means that we need to accept there's nothing we can do, and it's all up to God. We just graciously need to be on the receiving end of the gift and not let it go. That would be the first part of accepting His forgiveness. The second part, again, is being able to maintain that fellowship on a daily basis. And really, if we're thinking about it, Paul went out of his way to point out that as he was running this race, he was very much, I'm sure, because of his past and because of what he was told and shown by people who would reject him, just the same way you and I are likely on a daily basis, he was tempted to want to judge himself. But he very much boldly claimed that he doesn't even judge himself, and in fact is waiting for the Lord's report when He meets him after he crosses the finish line. And this is very, very difficult, honestly, to fully accept. It's something of spiritual maturity that, although I know all about it and I teach about it, I still find it very difficult to accept and to apply to my own life and my own walk. But really, when we are accepting His forgiveness and letting Him wash our feet, even after we are already saved, and desiring deeply to stay in that position of fellowship, though our sin and our flesh screams at us to run and offend Him, of course, it is truly a form of worship, a genuine laying down of our own desire to feel self-righteous. And we all have that desire, I think, internally to want to do something, to want to earn something, to want to be something in our own minds, if only, or perhaps in the minds of others, that makes us good. This is a really common trait of unbelievers who accept that Christ is Lord and yet refuse to actually accept that His sacrifice applies to them. and that somehow, even though they accept one half of the salvation package, the other half they can't fully accept because they just refuse to let go of their self-hatred. And when I say let go, self-hatred is a sin. It is a sin that you need forgiven for, right? Because if Christ died to save us all, our self-hatred, though it may be factually correct, it is spiritually inappropriate now that the Lord has laid down his life and made it possible for any and all to be his and to be a part of his family. And only then can we actually know freedom from those feelings, if we were to actually be able to accept that it's not about our position, our forgiveness of ourselves, our loving ourselves, because truly accepting the Lord is the ultimate form of self-love. It means that you're accepting God's point of view about who you are, whether you can see it or not. He sees the final product. He sees what he is going to do in us, and his Spirit and his intervention is the reason why we're ever able to do anything good in this life. We are stuck in a position where we have to lean on him like the ultimate crutch until we pass on to that new body and that eternal existence to see him. And that's a good thing too, because this whole life is about him. Really, what we're doing when we're accepting forgiveness on a regular basis, we're showing, well, I mean, first and foremost, the angels can see us, whether we're alone or surrounded by thousands, millions, whatever people. And in their position, from their perspective, especially the ones that have never sinned, they don't have a way to fully understand God's character from our perspective. They don't have a way to see just how unreasonably, and I say unreasonably in a human way. To God, it is perfectly reasonable to show just how loving he is and what he did. So don't mistake and let me tell you or convince you that I'm saying that the Lord's sacrifice is unreasonable. This is absolutely perfect, and it's all to God's glory. But that's the point. When we forgive others and we accept forgiveness from the Lord, we are literally showing the angels just how great God's absolutely, unbelievably forgiving and loving nature is. Satan and the angels, the demons, when they fell, in their falling, essentially had to suggest that God was incapable of regenerating them, and if enough of them were to break the family into pieces, that they would permanently be able to basically do whatever they want, because God wouldn't be in a position where he'd be forced to just have to let everybody go. And instead, God has decided that his perfect character and his perfect demand for righteousness will absolutely be upheld. And when Christ came and put to death all of the lies of Satan, hopefully, well, I mean, we could all hope, but it should have been air apparent in the eyes of the demons that they were duped. Now, obviously, the nature of angels is different than humans. They don't have the ability, at least it seems, after they've made a solid decision to turn around. There's absolutely no scripture that says that they can. But humans, in their weakness and in our lowly position, absolutely do. And in fact, us coming from the same fallen position as the angels going in reverse, this is a miraculous thing. And again, it's difficult because it does require a very humble attitude and a lack of desire to lie to ourselves and to others. But asking for forgiveness is shining a light on God's loving character for all to see around us. And it truly is one of the only ways really to maintain that extremely deep fellowship, because we are guaranteed to sin. And we should not, the gist of this video, we should not be fooled into thinking that forgiveness of ourselves or letting go of our past foibles and not involving the Lord and putting him as the offended ultimately is the worst possible scenario. We will be brought into all sorts of worldly and fleshly thinking that somehow our actions actually mean something. If we think that we can forgive ourselves, we are putting our own forgiveness on the same level as the Lord's sacrifice, which is an incredibly evil thing to do. I'm not saying it necessarily makes you unsaved, but it can definitely put you down a path where you can become unsaved if you self-righteously think that there's ever a thing you can do to add to salvation. And many who know their Bible very well, or the Bible very well, at least surfacely, and seem to have a strong grasp on, low sin output in this life, are actually not believers at all. And again, totally sad fact, but we have to accept everything. And as we walk along, honestly, the more and more our sin is going to hurt, the more we know him. So it's a constant test, and it's a constant show to those around us, and again, the angels, of how much we love him and how absolutely amazing his character is. It should be the other way around. His character is amazing, and we love him because of what he did. Comment down below. Let me know what you think. Kind of a Sunday rant, but I wanted to address this because self-love is taught as a very strong, and it's a potent replacement for Christ is what it is. Our entire generation is so full of itself, thinking that it has a godlike capacity to actually forgive the way Christ did and somehow come out clean on the other side. And much of today's church is into this. They call it New Age. It's not new. It's old pagan thinking. But we really need to grasp it, and also to understand the nature of why certain people who seem to be Christian on the outside, unfortunately, are truly not, until they actually humble themselves and fully accept Christ's sacrifice as applying to them and stop trying to atone for their mistakes in the flesh. There's just no way they're going to be able to. Anyway, let me know what you think, guys. I hope you're having a good Sunday. Hope to get some videos out this week, but it's a busy time, so I'll get them in when I can, and I'll try my best to put good thought to them before I put them out so it's not too scattered. Love you guys. Hope you're doing well.